Okay, let's get this thing started. Rita Riker here, President of the Board of Focus Greater Syracuse, and welcome to our Focus Forum. Today we want to hear from you to help us identify and consider topics for future forums. We held this session last year, and the ideas generated prompted us to host forums on topics such as bridging the digital divide, and an update on Blueprint 15. So we do definitely take your suggestions and work with them. So in terms of our process today, several of you have already submitted suggestions for future topics, and we will be calling on many of you to briefly introduce your recommended topic, including who you might like to hear from on the topic. Not necessarily a name, but an organization or a title. If you have a topic that you would like us to consider and hasn't been mentioned, please use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Board member Brian Hoke and I will be monitoring the chat. At the end of the session, we're going to share the topics that we've captured from our discussion and ask you to list in the chat the 2 to 3 topics most of interest to you, so we can get a sense of what looks to be most interesting. So I think what has been displayed as you've signed in, but a few ground rules for this format. Just please mute your audio when you're not speaking so that we don't hear any background noise, you know, those dogs barking or telephones ringing or whatever. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand feature, or simply raise your hand and we'll try to accommodate as much interaction as possible. And as always, we ask you to be respectful of everyone's opinions. As usual, we're scheduled for 1 hour today, and we'll be recording today's session. So if you have any trouble using the Zoom online, please try dialing in using the alternate phone number and sign-in information included in your invitation. I believe the information is also in the chat box. So now I'm going to turn this over to Brian Hoke, our board member, Brian Hoke, who will lead our discussion. Brian, it's all yours.
Thanks, Rita, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks for sending in your suggestions in advance. We got a lot of them. I think we'll start with those, but certainly, as Rita said, want to hear from you all, right? We had great luck in these forums in the past few years. I think in no small part because we're able to get suggestions from the people who come to them, who participate on them, who are servers, panelists. So this is a great chance for you to do our homework for us, to tailor these forums towards topics that are of interest to the community. So I'm happy to call on people. I have a few people queued up, but wondering if anybody would just like to raise a hand and start out by sharing something about your suggestion, maybe those that already came in. Anybody care to start the ball rolling? All right, I was thinking that would probably be the case. I can't tell you how happy I am to see Bill and Mariette Pollard show up as a little rectangle on my screen, who I had worked with, taught their children years ago, and volunteered at the Dunbar Center. Thank you both for being here. Would you like to start it off, just to put you guys on the spot?
I'll start, Brian. It's interesting that the timing of this program predates something I'm going to be doing via Zoom in Bronx with the Bronx DA's office next week, which is the focus on Black men, where they are, where they're going, where they're not going, and their concerns. And I just wrote a note on myself in response to the introduction and why I'm here. I do a lot of walking near where I live. And sometimes I walk in areas of the community and I don't see anybody who looks like me. My wife virtually refuses to walk without me. And so she rarely walks unless she can get me to walk in the sun and walk up and down hills. So what prompted me to suggest something along the nature of, for lack of a better word, I said racism, but it's not just about racism. It's about not being shot in a community in which someone defines as somewhere I don't live. It's about being a presence in a community in which I have lived off and on since 1989. I now have two grandsons. I'm concerned about them and where they live in Maryland, and about their ability to grow up as young men and lead reasonable lives. So I'm generally concerned about race and racism and the language that I hear. Someone mentioned Florida earlier. I'm concerned about the language I hear with regards to being woke, with regards to banning classes that make white people feel bad. And I'm concerned about the direction that we seem to be heading nationally with regards to how we instruct, how we basically get along and live in the neighborhoods that we live. And I think that's enough now for me to say on that. But I hope that teased you and gave you a sense of where I'm coming from.
It does.
Can I ask questions?
Yeah, I'll ask others to weigh in. Selfishly, I'll just ask, are those grandchildren Fred's?
No. Interesting. You said, no, they're Will's grandchildren.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't need to blame everybody else with that, but just for all my best to both boys. And you all live in Syracuse, right? You're back here now for some years?
Yeah, we've been back for 4 or 5 years since we left Brooklyn.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess I'd ask you both, or anybody else who'd like to chime in, how would you see that structure? What would be useful for people to hear for one of these forums, right? Just like we're doing now, to who might speak and what might it accomplish? I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I don't know who might speak. I think there's something to be had when people speak to people they know. Then they are a bit more free to ask the questions they really want to ask, which you may not do with someone from the outside. I think that people you're more likely to say how you really feel and what you have observed. And things have gotten such now, I don't know if an outside speaker is going to be regarded as an outsider. I just think we need to have a line of communication that allows us to understand that we have different histories in this country that we call the United States of America. I was intrigued yesterday with Justice Breyer's comments about being a Supreme Court justice. And I commented to Mariette and said I was really intrigued with his warmth, his sense of understanding of history, and his common sense approach to the Constitution and what we ought to be doing. So I'm thinking that we have to have the capacity to understand that everybody comes from a different place. They are here either they're native born or they came because they wanted to be here, and we have a history. And the thing that I took away from Breyer's comments yesterday was this experiment called the United States of America. So we're still wrestling and struggling with what we are and what we want to be. I'm regretting that we're still in an experiment. I hope we had it worked out, but the jurist has a better grasp of what that is when he says experiment.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. I see a hand up from Chris. Did you want to come in on this?
Yeah, so just by coincidence, Melanie Littlejohn hosted a meeting with our department this morning on unconscious bias that was facilitated by Interfaith Works. So I don't know how it would look like one of your Focus Forum sessions, but they were a great resource. They did a great job. It was about an 1.5-hour program for Melanie's group. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's great. I mean, those connections are terribly useful to us, and seeing what others have done and how to build on it or find speakers. So appreciate that, Chris. Thank you. Anybody else want to come in on this for suggestions? And again, we are recording this not just to share it with everybody else, but also for our own purposes to go back and look at this. Jessica?
I was gonna say with actually to quick introduce myself. Hi, I'm Jessica Lisi. I'm part of the Focus staff. And as some of the people on this call know, we hold Citizens Academy, and our first session is always on history, the history of Syracuse, with Bob Searing. So one of my suggestions of someone we could bring in is actually someone from OHA to talk about it from a historical aspect as well. Someone from the community who knows about that, keeping with Bill's keeping people in the community, the personal aspect might be good. So that was an idea of inviting someone from OHA to speak on a panel. And also Melanie Littlejohn is brilliant. So kind of framing it with that in mind. So that was just one idea.
Great. All right, thank you. Anybody else? Suggestions on this?
Yes, Brian Marriott.
Hey, Mariette.
I think that we might also want to look at structuring something a little different than what we normally do and have an interactive forum where individuals can discuss and share some of their ideas around racism, similar to the racial discussions that Eddie Green and Pollard started some years ago.
Okay.
And I think those dialogue circles really help people express what they were feeling until you tackle the problem on the personal level and do it in an environment where folk will really be honest. Then you'll hear individuals talk to you in a forum, but you won't really take that and internalize it as to who I am and what I'm going to do. So you might structure something that way.
I did one of those in 1995. It was very powerful.
Mm-hmm. And the second thing, even though we're not talking about other things we'd like to see us address, I would like to see us address poverty. Poverty is growing in Syracuse for those who are most in need, in spite of what we see on data. So we need to talk about where the money is going that comes into our city to address poverty, who gets that money, what we're doing with that money, and then what can we do to restructure some of the ways that money is going.
Great. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay,
Anybody
I just
else?
want to chime in on that
Please, yeah.
last comment. Concerning the racism and that topic. I mean, that is a huge, topic, and it can be taken in a lot of different, directions and things like that. But it is an important topic. So one of my suggestions would be certainly the interactive portion of it is great, so people can feel like they're involved. But I think we should try to come up with some learning outcomes or some terminal objectives to narrow it, and then try to keep it focused on, no pun intended, of course, on what we really want to gain from that type of interaction. And then the other side of it, I think as well, is going to have someone who's going to moderate it, who's able to kind of keep the tensions down and keep us on track and keep us stepping toward the objective of what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, our to your point, Reg, our March forum, not the next one, but the one after that, is on Lyme disease, right? I think we can all get behind Lyme disease being bad. There's not a lot of value judgment there, but a topic like this would be, to your point, in need of some more sensitivity and careful handling. So I appreciate that point. And also thank you for joining the Focus Board.
Yes, I wanted to announce that too.
Yeah.
As of today, Reg is on the Focus Board.
4 hours, yeah, so that's great. Well, thank you everybody so far. Any other comments on this thread? All right, let's move on to another topic. Somebody else like to start the bidding? I can call on you. Don't make me call on you, but please, anybody else want to speak on a topic that they proposed or one they didn't even send in yet?
Bill, do you still have your hand up, Bill Pollard?
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss one?
Well, I think I see a hand up from Bill and Mariette.
I think
Maybe Marriott
I
had
gotta put it down.
Okay, all right, got it. We can do that for you.
I got it.
Got it, okay. Sorry.
Mhm.
Anybody else? I can pick one, or anybody Rita or Jessica, you got one you'd like to, I'm looking over now, but I was focusing on the conversation.
I
Anything
think
else? somebody
Dave Ashley has his hand up.
Oh, great. Okay. Dave, go ahead, please.
I don't know whether you've just, hello, Bob Haley.
Hi, Dave. Welcome.
What I submitted was an idea about doing something that all the communities in the country probably should be looking at because of the we're lacking. It's something that's critical timing but the leadership is lacking. And what it is we've all heard about with that climate change is taking place, and that we should try to limit climate change to 1.5 degrees centigrade, but hopefully no more than 2. And the administration is trying to include additional monies in the Build Back Better law, which is stalled now and may or may not happen. They may split it out, but nobody has done something which isn't very difficult, but is a responsibility that we all have, because the problem boils down to the idea that the resources we use, like the energy we use and the energy we generate, is all local. In other words, we all are operating a TV, right? A computer right now, and we have a car and we have a house and so forth, and we drive to work, or we do this and we go to our buildings. So all of that is taking place right here. But the IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change, has told us that we need to be on track by 2030 to be reducing by about 45% our greenhouse gases. That gives us about 8 years. So, we're all supposed to be doing that as a community. Let's say that all the county and city vehicles, all the county and city buildings, for example, but not just that. In other words, somebody in our governmental structure to help guide the citizens on what they should be doing and providing assistance, providing funding, and so forth. That's not happening. And the other thing that if you imagine that the energy, I don't know whether there are solar farms in Onondaga County. I think right now I know the town of Manlius is looking at their refuse area and so forth. And I think the town of DeWitt already has one. But looking at what would be Central New York's responsibility as far as generating fuel, maybe it's biofuel also, you see. I mean, we don't have, I don't think we have any natural gas here, but looking at all of those things and deciding what are our responsibilities. In other words, we could be recommending working with the people in the city and the county who are those contacts for. I don't think the city has a sustainability person on board right at the moment, but I know the county does, and working with those folks and nudging them to ahead to try to, for example, at least start to make a survey of all of the county energy uses, and how are they going to convert basically, you're going to have to convert them all to electricity, the buildings, the vehicles, and everything else. So I haven't seen any snowplows that are electric snowplows yet, but they're coming. And there's all of on the stock market right now, the huge rage is electric cars and so forth. But there's no push in Onondaga County to do that. And if you look at the Post Standard, you will not find an electric vehicle advertised in the Post Standard. And people with lower incomes may feel it's difficult to make that transition to electric vehicles and so forth. So to have focus maybe help to facilitate something like that in our community so that our governmental bodies and our citizens, that we can sort of outline a role for maybe who should be doing what, and maybe we can do a little ourselves and try to provide some guidance and that would be the essence of what that study group would be doing.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. We had a similar suggestion sent in by Kathy Deaver. Kathy, I didn't see you in a quick scan of the participant list, but if you're here and want to chime in, please do. But thank you, David, for that. Anybody else want to come in for some suggestions or comments on that as a future topic? Bob, I was not surprised that you would raise a finger, but please.
Yes, so certainly sustainability is one of the core things of focus. In other words, local communities knowing what they need for their own sustainability. So David, you're right on. You've been a champion of this for years. And I think Chris Carrick has also entered the chat there with a comment about New York State standards. So we Focus could take David's comment and bring it to a local awareness as through the dialogue groups that Bill has mentioned, and get it to be more real for our local community, and both in terms of goals and achievability. It's a very good suggestion, David. Thank you.
Chris, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, this may have changed, but not all that long ago, some of the local municipalities had restrictions permitting wise for commercial solar installations, which I kind of thought was crazy because, you know, once you get out of the core of downtown, some of our towns are pretty rural.
Mhm.
And some of these permit restrictions were enacted decades ago. But surveying or highlighting to the communities too is saying maybe you're not seeing development because some of the communities aren't receptive and have restrictions against it. So another potential way of looking at it.
Yeah, fair point. Any thoughts on folks from whom it would be good to hear on this, either from where we are or where we're going or what we might do or what we shouldn't do? Love to get some suggestions for that if anybody has them.
Well, Bob mentioned Chris Carrick.
Okay. Who's here with us today, right? Chris, did you want to come in on this?
I'd be happy to speak, sure.
Thank you.
I've been monitoring the Climate Action Council's work and trying to make my way through the scoping plan that was just released. It's an 800-page document, so it's a lot there. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be great to pair someone like myself with, with someone from the city and or county, just to get that local perspective on what they're doing.
I think, Chris, just to piggyback on all these ideas here from Focus's point of view, Focus is going through a complete review of its 20 years, and we're looking to new planning. That's underway. It's very current, and these comments you're giving us are great. We brought in 2006, 2007, Janine Benyus, one of the national leaders in sustainability, and we can do this again. Syracuse has the focus of the federal government and the leadership that David's speaking to. I think, however, locally, we haven't lifted our own community up to a level of understanding the benefits and understanding what we can achieve. So maybe we can do more on bringing in more expertise, both as Chris and David are suggesting.
The other point that should be made is that the city and the county have together approximately, some of which is already allocated, $200 million in rescue funds. You've all heard about the $80 million aquarium and things like that. So the county has you might almost say it's a slush fund. But when you get to be, for example, converting all of the school buses in Onondaga County to electric school buses, that costs money. And if you don't do it now when you have some money, people go say, oh, well, we can't afford it, you see. So that's what you're gonna hear when these things become public, is because well, we can't afford it. But here we have all of this money now. So if we don't start now and use some of that money to start with, it's going to be lost, a huge opportunity. But that requires some pressure to an awareness, creating an awareness campaign on the legislative bodies and so forth, and the the city and county executives and the towns and villages also, because every little DPW has equipment, you see. And so it requires a lot of awareness, and we could assist with that, you see.
Gotcha. Thank you. Anybody else like to weigh in on this topic? All right, so let's switch gears. Let's focus on education in schools. We had a few suggestions. Thank you again to everybody who sent them in. Nelson Price, Chris Carrick, both sent in some thoughts about talking about education in our community. Nelson mentioned some crises in public schools, teacher burnout, resignations. Chris had suggested talking about public school renovations, an update on that and the status of the STEAM high school. Wondering if either of you would like to speak briefly about what you might see as a useful topic for Focus to present to the community.
Well,
Don't have to, certainly. Yeah, please go ahead.
and this is Chris. I tried to express myself, in that point that you just made, but I don't know if others, are more up to speed on what's happening with the renovation plans and the JCSB, but I feel like it's come off my radar a little bit, and maybe it has for others as well. And certainly regarding the STEAM school, I see that as one of the most exciting, projects in the works in the community. So,
and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we had a secondary school topic sort of mooted for last year, but weren't able to pull together. Am I conflating something completely off base? Or Rita, Jessica, Nancy, that right?
So we worked with the higher education, and TMR did the K through 12.
Oh, that's
so we
right.
did in both together, but so it fell into the theme of education during COVID. But I think a more nuanced forum on teachers and what they're going through and the impact of COVID on the teacher workforce would be very interesting. Or on the renovations as well. Kind of maybe circling back, it's been a year, seeing how the public schools are. I know we had Derek Dorsey, he's the executive director for the School Board Association. I feel like he would be a great speaker if you would want, and has a really great insight on how we can support schools, what's going on with the schools, and particularly the teachers as well. So that's
You
just
could probably touch on any of those topics, right?
Oh, yeah.
A broad range of background. Great.
I'll mention something as well.
Please.
There's a group that's in Syracuse, part of the Syracuse City School District, the Curriculum and Technical Education Partnership Council, which I'm a part of that council. And we meet periodically concerning the current technical education, public schools that are in Syracuse City School District. And one of the big projects is the STEAM school. And there's a gentleman that's on our council who's been the person spearheading that particular project. And he's been working with different, people in the community, working on the curriculum, bringing the inner city students and then bringing some suburban students together, all, how they want to try to work this new STEAM school out. So maybe he would be, someone who could come to the forum and maybe discuss that. And then regarding the renovations, Jaime Alicia, is the one who's really over, the partnership council. So maybe he could come, or maybe a representative could come and talk about the renovations that they're doing within the public schools.
Great. All right. Thanks, Rich. And what was I'm sorry, did you mention the name of that gentleman, just so we get it on the recording, who was spearheading that?
No, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I'll get that back to you for sure.
Yeah, we can follow up on that. Okay, cool. Amy, did you want to come in on this? I see a hand up.
Amy, can you unmute?
All right, well,
Or maybe-
we'll come back if needed. Anybody else? Topic suggestions regarding education, the struggles of teachers, STEAM, the effort for the STEAM campus. All right, let's move on to a different topic. Anybody care to
I
jump
just
in?
add, Brian, that I think part of this would be also looking at what's happening with the students in terms of I understand nationally, right, the as graduation rates are down because of COVID and just students either not meeting the requirements of the testing, et cetera. So where are we in terms of catching our students up across the different grades?
Gotcha. Great, thanks.
This is Bill. I think we should talk about education, and education was one of those little dots that I would underscore in a discussion about racism. And I think Reginald alluded to this a bit when he responded to the piece on racism as well. My concern has to do with not just with how we teach, but what we teach. And I'm gravely concerned about these concepts that get tossed about like woke and about these varying theories and this, that, and the other. And I think that these terms that are being tossed about takes us away from what education really is about. And what we want to focus on, I think, is a way to enable people to explore history void of all of the quote unquote underpinnings that shape the way we have interpreted and researched our various histories. And I think that we have largely mistaken woke and critical race theory to meaning that we're out to get somebody. And all we really want to do is to understand what has happened. And whatever has happened in the past happened from varying points of view. And it's important that we understand these varying points of view in order to get a more accurate record of what has transpired. And my concern has to do with politically, we are squashing, I think, opportunities to give people a chance to learn what has taken place. And we can talk further on this as we move down the line about how we might approach this.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. Thanks. Bill.
Yeah.
Amy,
Sorry.
you're here, please. Go ahead.
Brian, you would be shocked to know how hard it is to unmute yourself on a phone once you have muted yourself. So
And there's a baby involved too, right?
Oh, yeah. So the topic of education, I think, as a Syracuse City School District graduate, I think that often as the community, we don't know what's going on in the district. We don't know, I mean, updates about what's happening with the STEAM school. How about updates in general about what's happening and what the big impacts are in the city school district, rather than focusing in on one of those topics? And I'm sure we can talk about that at our meetings.
Yeah, that's a great point. I appreciate that.
Thank you all.
Megan, did you want to come in on this too?
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to add, having recently gone through the high school choice process with my own child in the city school district, the programs offered through the career and technical education, I think they're wonderful opportunities for the students in the city, and I feel like in general the community isn't aware of those. So I don't know if the CTE staff have spoken to Focus in the recent past, but they've really expanded their programming and the options that remain in the more traditional city high schools. So and the folks at the CTE office are really dynamic speakers. They held a whole series of information sessions for 8th grade parents, and they do a great job marketing their programs. And I will just say that we were told on those calls that the STEAM school would open in the fall of 2023. So I don't know how much they're still sticking to that time frame, but there were questions from parents about that opportunity for, current 8th grade parents moving into 9th grade. And we were told that would not be an option for us, that they will be accepting 9th graders in the fall of 2023. So that was the latest I heard, but that
Not
seems to
this fall,
change
Not
frequently.
this fall, but next fall. Right?
Sorry?
Not, not this fall, but next fall then.
Correct. So
Oh,
not for this year's current 8th graders.
Got it.
So
Okay.
the following year. So, and I put a link in the chat that the city school district does have a page up for the STEAM school already. And also they do have a page for their CTE programs, and they are extensive. And I think that really is information that needs to get out to the wider community.
Great. Okay, cool. Yes, I'm sorry. There's a hand up, please. Anika? Annika?
Yes.
Am I-
Yep. Nope. It's Anika. You said it correct.
Great,
When
thank
we
you.
speak about education, the concern is how are they including all students, especially when you have students, not only just students of color, but students with I say deferring abilities. I don't necessarily say disabilities because it's not a disability. They just learn differently. Because with COVID, I don't want to use the excuse that COVID is why they're not, because there were responsibilities that were not handled. So how moving forward, or how to even admit the mistakes that have been made, to have students that have been left out, and then how to include them now and in the future. Because there were, like I said, there's responsibilities from top down at several districts that have missed the mark. And this is how we're missing students. So then how are they going to be bringing those students back in? There could be no longer be the excuse of, oops, or they are no longer linked to the school or whatever. There needs to be an outreach to bring these students back in, because these students are going to be the future. So you know what I mean? So how are we bringing them in to have them be responsible, to have them have some things to do? And I know there's several after school activities, but it's not always available to all students. And then even some of the requirements, how are they not being followed? How do we refollow? Just recreating a lot of things that were lost or should have just been focused on as well in preparation.
Gotcha. Thank you. It's a good point. And I'll use that as a segue into a thread that kind of runs through a lot of suggestions, but I don't know came up as a specific one. One thing we've talked about, and Nancy Smith has championed this idea, as this is the meta forum on forums, is this model, right? Me sitting here in my suburban home with my laptop online, a way we can reach everybody, right? It clearly isn't perfect, but are there ways we can bring groups of people for whatever reason, because they don't know about it, because they're not able to participate? Anybody want to say anything just about how Focus can reach out to communities that we want to talk to, because we want to hear from everybody who might not be participating, who might have interesting things to say that we're not hearing, whose lives are just equally as important as everybody else's, but who don't show up. And granted, right? I mean, this is a lunchtime, somebody working a full-time job might not get here, but I don't know. Any Nancy, do you want to comment on that, or anybody else want to comment on how forums themselves could, in a broader sense, be available to and known to a greater number of people in our community?
I will say that was actually my question that I sent in with my registration for today. It was this is Anika again, Anika Flag. I said, how are all trying to incorporate more people of color into and onto these forums? I mean, that could be Black, Brown, Latino, Native. I say this with any forum when I see a limited number of multiple individuals, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's those with differing abilities. Some are seen, some are not seen. What adaptations have also been utilized or underutilized to account for those with differing abilities? An interpretation of the forum, is it available? Because that's a concern if you have those that are deaf or hard of hearing.
Right. Yeah,
In several forms you don't see that. Like I said, a lot of people are not on social media, or do they have the internet enabled phones? So the concern is, like, there's several community centers you can go to. There's several programs. I'm part of Vera House's Elder Justice group. So how are you reaching even the elders? It's not just the youth, but there's elders. So we can have a multiple of ages in here, because there are concerns with several, age groups. It's not just always about race or gender. It's also, with the aging. So like you said, there's folks that don't have electronics. So how are we? You can't say, okay, go on to Facebook. We'll send you an email. What about posting with the TNT groups? There's, that's just an example. There's several groups, to go ahead, to get this information to bring them in, whether it's those that are walkers, cyclists. There's so many people out. Salt City Market, hang some things there as examples. How are we really reaching folks to really hear what is the nitty gritty, the things that they really want to talk about, have more information on that they're not getting.
And Anika, thank you. I see your suggestion now on my list here, and I should have recognized that as germane to this. So I appreciate you bringing that up. All great points. Anybody else want to come in on this thought?
As long as you
I just want to respond to Anika's point, Brian. ACTS has rotated. This is pre-COVID, but ACTS has rotated its meetings to churches around the area for their book discussions. And this might be something that folks may want to consider, is identifying regions in the city where people could meet collectively to address some of these concerns and issues. Now you've got to take into account Omicron and Delta and everything else related to COVID. But that is one way to address the problem that Anika is raising at this point.
Great, thank you. Nancy, you wanted to come in on this?
I just think that we all have to keep in mind that, we need to go to where people are, with topics that are of interest, where they are physically, the time of day. And I couldn't agree more than everything that's been said. But even with COVID, we can do hybrid forums, right, in different locations around the city, so that people who don't have access digitally can physically show up. We can play with different times of day. We can work with maybe smaller forums, right? I mean, if Focus has the board and the staff capacity, that's always an issue with Focus, but we could look for funding that would allow us to do more smaller forums in local neighborhoods, because for many people, community is their neighborhood. So I think this is a very important topic for Focus. So really appreciate all the input.
Yeah, me too. Anybody know if there's real-time transcription for folks who have no or limited hearing on Zoom? I can't believe it does.
Zoom offers that. I was actually, Zoom offers it. It's at the bottom of our screen.
Oh, does it really? Oh, it does. Okay, gotcha.
The host has to enable it.
Okay, we should check into that. Excellent.
One
Sorry,
of the things.
Please, Jessica.
Sorry, Brian. I was gonna say, I saw in the chat a lot of people are talking about bringing teenagers in. Maybe one idea we can have, and I know it's still kind of a small part of the larger teenage group, but a lot of 12th graders, they have to take a government course. And maybe working with teachers saying, hey, one of the big things is getting students involved in their local communities and being informed, having them, maybe working with teachers saying, hey, we're going to have a forum at this time. If you would like to tune in, we will give you all the information, and then they can project it in the classroom. And that could still at least give students a chance to listen in and comment, on what's going on in the community. So that's, because we have them at noon, schools in session. So that might be one idea we could have of bringing it to the people, bringing it to students. So.
Great. We do have.
Wait, I've enabled the live transcription if people want to see how it works.
Yeah. All right. Wow, and it's pretty accurate. Yeah, impressive. Okay, great. Thank you. I think we have maybe 10 minutes, a little bit more left. I want to make sure we're not missing folks who weren't called on, who really want to raise their hand and delve into another topic. Is there anybody out there in forum land who wants to make sure that something we've not touched on as yet does get brought up? I certainly will call on folks if we don't, but want to leave some room for that. Anybody out there that wants to take this in a different direction? Nancy Smith?
I would like to invite anyone who to mention the lack of housing, especially affordable housing. I think that's a very important topic. I don't know who suggested it.
Yeah, I'm just, let's see, Alan Gaston and folks from the Focus Board, but so I'm sorry, somebody wanted to come in?
No, I was just saying, I think that part of it was some of the board members have mentioned it, for Focus Board members have mentioned it in the past.
And certainly with the expiration, right, of the eviction moratorium, you know, I mean, a more relevant topic even that was already relevant. But yeah, certainly seems like fertile ground for some discussion for Syracuse and for the country as a whole. Anybody else want to comment on that thought as a potential topic for a forum?
I thought it would be a great topic, especially when we're talking about I-81 and you're talking about moving folks and then switching, and what do people consider mixed housing? And then we have all these different developments that are not always necessarily what one would consider affordable housing. You know, I think really defining what is considered affordable housing and how to not have so many people that are becoming houseless, not just from the eviction moratorium, but also just from the lack of stable housing, the lack of, you know, because of codes and so many things that are on buildings, not just COVID and having issues with moving there, but, you know, just the lack of quality housing that should also be in there along with the affordable housing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I think also we should add to that affordable housing, stretching it to also include nursing homes, the quality of the nursing homes. That's housing for seniors. And then also the non-nursing home housing for seniors. What's available? What do we have? Are we looking at any of the new housing options that we should build as a city to help support our senior population?
Yeah, great point. Thank you, Mariette. Anybody else want to come in on this?
Well, I just wanted to mention, sorry, I just wanted to mention that the board's been thinking about this for some time as well, very seriously. And what's interesting about every time you start a subject is we're a fairly insular, even though we have many experiences, as has been mentioned before. Syracuse is still quite uniquely a difficult place for real estate and housing, and we don't know about growth. So there's a lot of variables that are not typical about Syracuse, and yet we tend to think that these are general subjects. They're not. We need to have a good understanding of the context. I mean, we have some very serious demographics that are negative in the city about housing and education, the quality of place, and yet we have great resources. Part of this discussion, when we advance the housing topic, will be about real estate trends, relationship of real estate to the central New York region, and therefore the result of affordable housing is new ventures. It has to be a rebalance. This has been a disaster in Syracuse for, well, since we went from the original city pattern in, say, the 1850s, 1880s maybe, and then certainly after the 1900s, changing, and the suburban impact, as you know, has been negative to all cities that are 200 years old, like Syracuse. But the real estate context is a changing dynamic. It's going to a new future. And what's great about your comments, everyone here, is to look at the quality of place in every aspect of our lives and improve it, and not just to take it as a general condition. So we'll be trying to get into that with experts.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know whether has Focus looked at the rezone document that is currently hasn't been passed, I guess, by the Common Council, but it has some very important things related to affordable housing. For example, there's going to be I've forgotten what the technical term is, but on properties where you can add an additional dwelling unit on existing properties. I've forgotten what the technical name of it is, but it could be a very controversial thing. For example, I'm in a suburban area here, and I can add, with that in mind, I can add a one-bedroom attached a separate dwelling unit, you see. And so looking at the rezone, for example, but the other thing is rezone doesn't allow you to build, if you were a developer or builder, or if you were an individual, you can't build a so-called New York City style townhouse because it's not, the rezone is not set up to allow it. You can't build, for example, in the university area, you couldn't take a block and have 18 or 20 foot wide townhouses that were individually owned. You could build a building with townhouses in them, but you couldn't have individually owned townhouses, and having individually owned properties like that will promote better housing in a community, because there's more units and they're less expensive, and they're often in walkable areas too. And so if you wanted to look at rezone, there are some very interesting things in there, and the Common Council might appreciate that, because it seems to be stalled. They don't seem to be acting on it.
I think that David makes a very important point. My wife and I are from North Carolina, and my wife specifically grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we are getting overwhelmed with offers to buy her mother's home, and they're doing precisely what David has just described. I would also invite folks to consider the universities in the area that may be able to help us to weigh in on this. I'm thinking about the architectural program at SU, the School of Forestry is another possible resource. And Reginald, I don't know what Oswego is doing with regards to space, for lack of a better word, but I think there are some resources available in the community that can help us to think outside of the box to the issue that David just raised.
I hate to break up this conversation because it's so great, but we are coming towards the end of our hour, and I have two things that I would want to make sure we accomplish. One is I'm going to put up the list, its categories of items. What we'd love you to do is it's a numbered list, just put in the chat the top three topics of interest to you, just by number, 1, 5, 6, whatever. And if you would do that before you leave, that would be wonderful. And in the meantime, I'm going to put that list up now. Jessica would like to talk a little bit about a project we have underway.
Yes. Hello all. So Focus Greater Syracuse has been given an amazing opportunity for the upcoming year. In partnership with the CNY Community Foundation, we'll be conducting an enhanced version of the Community Foundation's Life Needs Assessment Survey among our network of individuals. The Life Needs Assessment Survey has questions directed towards people's personal needs, but we have had questions that will help us as an organization understand perceptions of community needs, as well as awareness of how organizations and individuals can get involved in addressing those needs. So perfect topic for this forum. Responses to this survey will help Focus gain insight on issues and identify future topic areas for our forums, as well as other program areas in fitting with our mission of education and community engagement. The survey is super brief and will take about 5 minutes of your time, but we will send the link to the survey after this meeting. Your information will remain completely anonymous and secure thanks to the CNY Community Foundation. We just really ask that you take the survey and share it with your network so we can achieve a broad response. And then of course, we will actually be presenting the findings of the survey in April. So this is a super important project, like I said, and we just really ask that you take the survey. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at my email, jessicalisi@syr.gov.net, or call our number, which you can find on our website, but it's 315-448-8732. Thank you so much. We hope you can take the survey because this will be super important for Focus.
So that was a quick introduction to our survey. But no, clearly you'll get a link to a survey, and we would very much appreciate your response to that. So thank you very much. In the meantime, I have these topic areas up and would love to see people's, I know I'm going to leave it up for a while, And would love to see, sort of a weigh in as to which ones you would most like to see a presentation on. And recognizing some of these categories are fairly broad, but we would take the conversation that we had heard today to help us slim it down.
Could we also email them while we take the time?
Yes,
So we're not
yes,
having to sit and have
yes.
to rush and say, oh, wait, that's not what I wanted.
yes,
Sure.
that's
No,
sure.
super
We've
helpful.
got our email address, Focus Greater Syracuse. That would be wonderful as well.
What also I can do is I can send out the link to everyone who is who participated in the forum, and you can just email me back as well.
Yeah, I think that would be better. So we're not forced to like say, yay, and then be like, oh, wait, that's not what I wanted. So
Sure,
on a short
whatever,
notice.
whatever
Thank
works
you.
best. This has been wonderful. We appreciate everybody's willingness to participate. We always get such great ideas from everyone, and really appreciate all of your support in helping us to plan this. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Brian, for leading our discussion, and all of our participants. And hope you have a
You might want to leave this up if people want to.
I'll leave it up for
Great.
about 5 more minutes.
Great.
All right.
Thanks,
But feel
everybody.
free to leave. Take care,
Have a good
everyone.
weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your ideas.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Dave. Bye, folks.
This was such a great forum, I have to say. Thank you, everyone.
Where were we supposed to list the numbers, Rita?
Just in the chat.
Gotcha.
In a moment, Rita, I'm gonna have to hop off because I have a meeting with that's
No
students
problem.
from
No
SU,
problem.
so
No, you're fine. You're fine.
making sure I capture.
Yeah, well, the recording should capture it as well.
Yes. Let me escape from this. For the forum committee, or those left from it, I have written all the notes. A lot of the things people talked about, the people, so if you'd like, I can type those up so we at least have
Sounds
a
good.
written version. Yeah, and I can get
Sounds
that
good.
done for next meeting. So
Yes, I also took notes, Jessica. So if you send your notes to me, I'll add anything that I think that I picked up, perhaps if you did not.
perfect. That looks excellent. So I'll write that down.
Tim, are you finished with the list, or do you need more time?
Oh, hold on. I need to.
You need a little more time? Sure.
Thanks, everyone. It was a good forum, Jess, as you said.
Great
Great job.
forum.
Have a
Great
good
job.
weekend.
Yep.
Yes. Have a great weekend. All right, I have to hop off. I will see you
Yep.
all soon.
Okay, sounds good. I think Tim has left. Tim, have you left?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Have a great weekend, Nancy. Thank you.
I gotta keep the company. Bye.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.